My parents threatened to skip my wedding unless I invited the sister who slept with my ex. My name's Megan29F, and I got married about a year ago. You know how weddings are supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life? Yeah, that's the lie everyone tells you. What should have been a beautiful, emotional day turned into a full-blown shit show, courtesy of my family. Instead of soaking all in, I spent my wedding dodging drama like it was my full-time job. And trust me, they were absolutely determined to ruin it. They almost succeeded too. But here's the thing about me. I'm done being the quiet one who just takes it. I finally snapped and gave them a taste of their own medicine. Now they're all acting like I'm the monster in this story. So I need some outside opinions because at this point I feel like I'm losing my damn mind. Let me back up and explain how we even got here. I'm the youngest in a family of 5, and honestly, that explains a lot. First, there's my mom. If you've ever heard the term almond mom, that's her to AT. Always on some new diet, always judging what's on your plate. Even when she's being nice, there's always that little dig hiding underneath. Then there's my dad. The man only cares about money. Stocks, investments, profit margins. That's it. If it doesn't involve numbers going up, he checks out completely. And then we have my older sister, Emily 32F. To put it nicely, she's a nightmare. We've never had a good relationship. She's always been the golden child, the pride and joy while I was just there. Background noise. Growing up, she made it her personal mission to make my life miserable. Public humiliation was her favorite hobby. She'd embarrass me in front of people, then somehow flip the story so I looked like the problem. Every single time. The only person in my family I actually got along with was my grandma. She's sweet, down to earth, and honestly the only one who ever made me feel like I mattered. I was sent off to boarding school for most of my childhood, so I never really had the chance to bond with anyone. While my sister soaked up all the attention, I was out of sight, out of mind. I was really close to my aunt, though. She was the cool adult, fun kind, actually listened to me. We spent a lot of time together, until I was about 14, when she suddenly moved out. No explanation. Nothing. And not long after that, I was shipped off to boarding school. Whatever connection I had with her, and honestly with my entire family, just slowly disappeared. Now, here's how I ended up in boarding school in the first place. Short answer? My sister. Emily hated the fact that my parents dared to have a second kid. She wanted all the attention for herself, so she made me her favorite scapegoat. She'd break things around the house, mom's favorite vase, dad's stupid golf trophies, and somehow it was always my fault. She'd turn on the waterworks, put on her innocent little act, and spin some bullshit story about how I did it. Once, she even convinced them I stole money from dad's wallet. I didn't even know where he kept the damn thing. They believed her. Every time. When I was 12, things really exploded. She spilled red juice all over mom's precious white couch and blamed me for being careless. Another time, she ripped up dad's important work papers and said she saw me do it because I was bored. Spoiler alert, they believed her again. The final straw was when she broke a family heirloom, a crystal bowl that had been passed down for generations. She swore I was messing around and knocked it over. Mom and dad didn't even bother listening to me. They decided I was too much trouble and sent me away to boarding school like I was the problem that needed fixing. From that point on, my parents were basically MIA. They never showed up for anything. I had this huge piano recital once, like a big deal for me. I scanned the audience, hoping to see them. Nope, just strangers. Same thing when I won first place at a science fair after weeks of work. No call. No congratulations. Nothing. Eventually, I stopped expecting them to show up. It just became normal. When I finished school and moved back home for college, I stupidly thought maybe things would be different. Nope. Living with my sister again was like stepping straight back into a war zone. Emily was popular. Everyone knew her. She'd lived there forever. I was the new kid trying to stay invisible. She hated that people might compare us. So she went right back to her old tricks. She'd make snide comments in front of her friends, like casually mentioning I was a late bloomer academically, which wasn't even true. She threw huge parties and made damn sure I wasn't invited, just to remind me I didn't belong. And then came a final punch to the gut. I caught her with my boyfriend. No chum, no hiding. She practically flaunted it in my face, like she was proving she could take whatever she wanted, including him. I went to my mom, desperate for some kind of support. She brushed it off like it was nothing. That was it. I packed my shit and left. After everything blew up back home, I packed my bags and moved to a completely different city for college. New place, new people, clean slate. I basically went low contact with my family and focused on surviving school and building something for myself. I finished college there, then stayed on for university. Money was tight, so yeah, I had to ask my family for help with tuition. Surprisingly, they agreed. At the time, I thought it was my parents stepping up for once. Turns out, that wasn't even true. I found out later it was actually my grandma paying for most of it behind the scenes. My parents just took the credit. But honestly, I didn't care. Someone cared enough to help, and that was more than I was used to. While I was rebuilding my life, something good finally happened. I met someone incredible. We clicked right away. He treated me like I actually mattered. No mind games, no competition, no constant criticism. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen, loved, safe. We dated, things got serious, and eventually we got engaged. And yeah, it was everything I'd ever wanted. So eventually, I had to tell my family. I was nervous, but also kind of hopeful. I wanted them to see that I was okay, that I was happy, that I'd made it out and built something good. Their reaction? Painfully underwhelming. No excitement, no questions, just a dry, oh, okay, congrats, I guess. Like I told them I bought a new toaster instead of announcing my engagement. They didn't object, but they definitely didn't care. Honestly, I expected that, so I didn't push it. Wedding planning started not long after. My mom immediately suggested I come back home and have a wedding there. That was a hard no for me. I'd build a life in my new city. My friends were there. My fiance's family was there. I wanted the wedding where I actually felt supported. So I told her I was staying put. From that point on, my parents were basically ghosts. No help, no opinions, no effort. They didn't ask about venues, vendors, nothing. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were absolute angels. They helped with everything, venues, planning, logistics, all of it. They made me feel included instead of tolerated. It was honestly the first time wedding planning felt joyful instead of stressful. Then the invitations went out. Not long after that, my mom called me and said I'd made a mistake. Apparently, I hadn't included my sister's name on the invite. Before I could even respond, she brushed it off and said it didn't matter because she'd already told my sister about the wedding and that they'd all be attending. That's when I stopped her, because it wasn't a mistake. I didn't invite my sister on purpose. I didn't want her there. Period. My mom immediately switched tones and started treating me like I was being dramatic. She told me to stop being childish and said it was just a small oversight. When I reminded her that my sister slept with my ex, yes, that ex, she completely lost it. She accused me of holding grudges and being petty, said I needed to move on and stop living in the past. According to her, this wedding was a perfect chance to heal and rebuild family bonds. I was stunned. Heal what? Rebuild with someone who stabbed me in the back and never apologized? It felt like my feelings didn't matter at all, like they never had. I told her straight up that there had never been real family unity, and I'd always been the odd one out. I told her again, very clearly, that my sister was not invited. That's when she dropped the ultimatum. If my sister couldn't come, then no one from the family would attend. That was it. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just ended the call. I was done arguing. I spent hours pissed off, replaying the conversation in my head. And then something clicked. If they were willing to skip my wedding just because I set one boundary, then they never cared about me to begin with. So I stopped caring about their approval. And that's when I made a decision. If my family wanted to play dirty, I'd play right back. I decided to invite someone they absolutely couldn't stand. Someone they'd had beef with for years. My aunt. Yeah, that aunt. It was petty. It was deliberate. And honestly, it felt right. If they were going to try to control my wedding, I was done letting them. And to understand why inviting her mattered so much, you need some context about who she is. So here's where my aunt comes into the picture. She was always my dad's least favorite. Like, it wasn't even subtle. There was constant tension between them, and you could feel it in the room whenever they were together. Despite all that, she was always incredibly kind to me, and even to my sister, which honestly says a lot about her. Then one day, everything blew up. I was still pretty young at the time, so no one ever explained exactly what happened. All I knew was that there was this massive fallout, screaming matches, doors slammed, and then she was just gone. She moved away, and no one talked about her after that. As I got older, pieces started falling into place. I slowly realized that my dad had basically framed her and deliberately caused problems between her and my grandma. There were also issues with her marriage, and from what I could tell, my mom had her hands all over that mess too. I never got the full story from my parents, shocker, but it became painfully clear that my dad had seriously screwed her over. So when I decided to invite her to my wedding, it wasn't just about being petty. It felt like reconnecting with someone who actually cared about me and had been hurt by the same people. In a weird way, it felt like balance. Reaching out to her wasn't easy. At first, she didn't respond to my messages at all. No text back, no calls returned, nothing. So eventually, I said screw it and decided to go see her in person. Turns out, she wasn't even that far away. What shocked me most was finding out she'd been living in the area for years. When I showed up at her place, she was polite but distant, guarded, like someone who'd been burned badly and didn't want to relive it. But once I explained everything, how my parents treated me, how my sister made my life hell, how I'd always felt ignored and disposable. Something changed. She invited me inside. We sat down for tea, and that's when she finally opened up. Here's what actually happened. Years ago, my aunt had a boyfriend that my grandma didn't approve of. Instead of letting two grown adults handle their own business, my parents decided to insert themselves. They fed my grandma a bunch of lies, convincing her that my aunt was planning to run off, elope, and abandon the family without caring how it would affect her. At the same time, they told my aunt that grandma had given her an ultimatum: dump the boyfriend or be disowned. My aunt was devastated. She tried to talk to grandma and explain herself, but by then, grandma had already been told that my aunt had chosen a man over her own family. Everything escalated fast. Then my grandma had a minor shock and was hospitalized. And this is where my dad went full manipulator. He told my aunt that grandma didn't want to see her, that grandma had officially disowned her, that her presence would only make things worse. None of that was true. My aunt believed him. She thought she'd been completely rejected, that she'd hurt her mother beyond repair. Meanwhile, my dad was telling grandma that my aunt had abandoned her in her time of need. So both of them thought the other didn't care. It was fucked up. And my parents didn't stop there. They went around telling relatives that my aunt was selfish, heartless, and obsessed with her boyfriend. They even accused her of stealing money from my grandma's account to support him, which was a total lie. By the time my aunt realized how badly she'd been manipulated, too much time had passed. She was angry, hurt, ashamed, and she didn't have the courage to face grandma again after everything she thought had happened. So she stayed away. Meanwhile, my parents kept twisting the story for years. They told extended family that my aunt caused my grandma's health issues, that she was the villain in some made-up family tragedy. Hearing all of this made my blood boil. I asked her to come to my wedding, not just for me, but so she could finally talk to grandma face-to-face and clear things up. It took a lot of convincing, but eventually she agreed. I also warned her about my sister and how my family was trying to force me to invite her. She wasn't thrilled, but she said she'd come. Wedding day rolls around, and things immediately felt tense. My sister showed up with my mom, and within minutes they were making passive-aggressive comments. My mom was glued to my sister until she saw my aunt. The look on her face? Pure shock, followed by rage. She stormed up to me and demanded to know why my aunt was there. I stayed calm and told her we were rebuilding family bonds, that it was a chance for everyone to be a happy family again. She was livid. She was ready to cause a full-blown scene, but I'd already given my sister-in-law a heads up. She stepped in like a pro and helped manage the situation so the ceremony could continue. Despite everything, the ceremony itself was beautiful. But as I walked down the aisle, I could feel my family staring daggers into my back. So here's where my aunt comes into the picture. She was always my dad's least favorite. Like, it wasn't even subtle. There was constant tension between them, and you could feel it in the room whenever they were together. Despite all that, she was always incredibly kind to me, and even to my sister, which honestly says a lot about her. Then one day, everything blew up. I was still pretty young at the time, so no one ever explained exactly what happened. All I knew was that there was this massive fallout, screaming matches, doors slammed, and then she was just gone. She moved away, and no one talked about her after that. As I got older, pieces started falling into place. I slowly realized that my dad had basically framed her and deliberately caused problems between her and my grandma. There were also issues with her marriage, and from what I could tell, my mom had her hands all over that mess too. I never got the full story from my parents. Shocker, but it became painfully clear that my dad had seriously screwed her over. So when I decided to invite her to my wedding, it wasn't just about being petty. It felt like reconnecting with someone who actually cared about me and had been hurt by the same people. In a weird way, it felt like balance. Reaching out to her wasn't easy. At first, she didn't respond to my messages at all. No text back, no calls returned, nothing. So eventually, I said screw it and decided to go see her in person. Turns out, she wasn't even that far away. What shocked me most was finding out she'd been living in the area for years. When I showed up at her place, she was polite but distant, guarded, like someone who'd been burned badly and didn't want to relive it. But once I explained everything, how my parents treated me, how my sister made my life hell, how I'd always felt ignored and disposable, something changed. She invited me inside. We sat down for tea, and that's when she finally opened up. Here's what actually happened. Years ago, my aunt had a boyfriend that my grandma didn't approve of. Instead of letting two grown adults handle their own business, my parents decided to insert themselves. They fed my grandma a bunch of lies, convincing her that my aunt was planning to run off, elope, and abandon the family without caring how it would affect her. At the same time, they told my aunt that grandma had given her an ultimatum: dump the boyfriend or be disowned. My aunt was devastated. She tried to talk to Grandma and explain herself, but by then, Grandma had already been told that my aunt had chosen a man over her own family. Everything escalated fast. Then my grandma had a minor shock and was hospitalized. And this is where my dad went full manipulator. He told my aunt that Grandma didn't want to see her, that Grandma had officially disowned her, that her presence would only make things worse. None of that was true. My aunt believed him. She thought she'd been completely rejected, that she'd hurt her mother beyond repair. Meanwhile, my dad was telling Grandma that my aunt had abandoned her in her time of need. So both of them thought the other didn't care. It was fucked up, and my parents didn't stop there. They went around telling relatives that my aunt was selfish, heartless, and obsessed with her boyfriend. They even accused her of stealing money from my grandma's account to support him, which was a total lie. By the time my aunt realized how badly she'd been manipulated, too much time had passed. She was angry, hurt, ashamed, and she didn't have the courage to face Grandma again after everything she thought had happened. So she stayed away. Meanwhile, my parents kept twisting the story for years. They told extended family that my aunt caused my grandma's health issues, that she was the villain in some made-up family tragedy. Hearing all of this made my blood boil. I asked her to come to my wedding, not just for me, but so she could finally talk to Grandma face-to-face and clear things up. It took a lot of convincing, but eventually she agreed. I also warned her about my sister and how my family was trying to force me to invite her. She wasn't thrilled, but she said she'd come. Wedding day rolls around, and things immediately felt tense. My sister showed up with my mom, and within minutes they were making passive-aggressive comments. My mom was glued to my sister until she saw my aunt. The look on her face? Pure shock, followed by rage. She stormed up to me and demanded to know why my aunt was there. I stayed calm and told her we were rebuilding family bonds. There was a chance for everyone to be a happy family again. She was livid. She was ready to cause a full-blown scene, but I'd already given my sister-in-law a heads up. She stepped in like a pro and helped manage the situation so the ceremony could continue. Despite everything, the ceremony itself was beautiful. But as I walked down the aisle, I could feel my family staring daggers into my back. The ceremony itself was honestly beautiful. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was actually making my own choices instead of bending over backward to keep my family happy. That feeling didn't last long. As soon as the ceremony ended and the reception started, everything went to hell. My aunt had taken my grandma into a separate room so they could talk privately. And of course, my parents immediately went into full panic mode. They were hovering outside the door, whisper yelling, knocking, trying to get in like they were about to miss some life or death secret. They were practically banging on the door, desperate to interfere. Meanwhile, my sister was doing what she does best, running her mouth. She was making snide comments about how the wedding wasn't really that impressive and how the decorations looked cheap and rushed. My sister-in-law shut that shit down fast. Calm, classy responses. Stuff like, everyone seems to be having a great time, and today isn't about decorations, it's about celebrating the couple. Watching her verbally body my sister without raising her voice was honestly satisfying. By this point, I was exhausted, emotionally drained. I didn't have the energy to deal with my sister's nonstop negativity on top of everything else. I told my parents to back off and give my aunt and grandma some space. I said they deserved to talk privately, without interference, just once. Instead of listening, my parents snapped. They started yelling at me right there, accusing me of trying to destroy their happy family. They said I was selfish, dramatic, and deliberately trying to stir up chaos on my own wedding day. That was it. My husband and my mother-in-law stepped in immediately. They told my parents that if they didn't calm the hell down and stop making a scene, they would be removed from the venue. That's when my dad completely lost his shit. In front of everyone, he started insulting me. Loudly. He said he never liked me, that I'd always been the problem child, that I was a disappointment and had always been difficult to deal with. I could feel myself about to break, like full-on meltdown territory. Before I could even react, my husband stepped up and called security. A few minutes later, security showed up and escorted my parents out of the venue. Watching them get walked out of my wedding was surreal, painful, but also relieving. The reception continued after that. Despite the chaos, we managed to salvage the night. We laughed, danced, and tried to focus on the people who actually wanted to be there for us. Later that night, once things finally slowed down, I checked my phone. That's when I realized something terrifying. I had completely forgotten about my sister. I assumed she left when my parents got kicked out. Nope, she stayed. Not only that, she had gone live on social media. Full tears. Full victim mode. She was ranting to her followers about how ungrateful I was for throwing our parents out of my own wedding. She painted this dramatic sob story about how I'd apparently been a nightmare my entire life. According to her, I was always jealous of her. I never appreciated the love and support the family gave me. I was a selfish brat who constantly tried to compete with her and push her aside. She said I ruined the family's reputation by inviting my aunt, and then had the audacity to disrespect our parents on the most important day of my life. Her live stream was pure bullshit, but people were eating it up. She claimed I was difficult to love, that she tried so hard to be a good sister, but I'd push her away. In her version of reality, she was the perfect daughter carrying the family on her back, and I was some rebellious, ungrateful disaster who didn't understand what family even meant. The comments were full of sympathy. People telling her she deserved better, asking how her own sister could do that to her. I was furious. She hijacked my wedding and turned it into her personal pity party, all to keep playing the golden child. I felt trapped by my family's chaos, even on my own damn wedding day. I needed out. I needed sanity. So I called my grandma. Turns out, she and my aunt had been together the entire time after their private talk. When my grandma answered, she sounded calm, peaceful even. I asked how it went. She told me that she and my aunt had finally actually talked for the first time in years. My aunt told her everything. How my parents twisted the situation with her boyfriend. How they convinced grandma that she was planning to abandon the family. My aunt explained how she tried to tell the truth, but by then my parents had already poisoned the well. Grandma had been told my aunt didn't care about her and was going to elope no matter what. My grandma was stunned. She genuinely thought my aunt had just chosen to walk away. Then my aunt explained what happened after grandma had that minor shock and was hospitalized. How my dad told her that grandma didn't want to see her and had decided to cut her off completely. My aunt believed him. She didn't want to cause more pain, so she left. Meanwhile, my dad told grandma that my aunt abandoned her. They pieced everything together right there at my wedding. My grandma admitted she'd been hurt and confused for years, wondering why my aunt never reached out, especially after health scares. My aunt said she tried, but every time, my parents blocked her. Flowers that were never delivered. Calls that never went through. Cards that got lost. They cried. They hugged. Years of bullshit finally came crashing down. So while I was dealing with my sister's meltdown and my parents' outbursts, at least one good thing happened. My aunt and grandma made peace. And that's when I decided I was done. I decided to sue my sister for defamation. My aunt and grandma backed me completely. My aunt also said she was ready to sue my parents for manipulation and mental harassment. Now my parents are blaming me, saying I caused all of this. So Reddit, am I the asshole for not giving in and inviting my sister? Or am I the asshole for finally standing up for myself? Update 1. So it's been about a week since the wedding, and yeah, things have been wild. First off, I want to say thanks to everyone who supported me in the comments. I read way more of them than I probably should have. As for the people saying I'm stupid, spineless, or that I deserved everything because I kept my family in my life for so long, let's slow down for a second. This is my family we're talking about. I love them. At the time, I genuinely believed they wouldn't sink that low. Clearly, I was wrong. Lesson learned. Anyway, here's what's happened since. My mother-in-law is understandably annoyed by all the chaos. And honestly, I don't blame her. No one wants to deal with family explosions and legal threats right after wedding. That said, she's still been supportive, just understandably irritated by how messy everything turned out. On the bright side, my husband and my sister-in-law have been absolute rocks. They've had my back 100%. No hesitation, no, but they're your family bullshit. Having that kind of support has made this whole mess way more bearable. Now, for the big update. Yes, I officially sued my sister over that live stream she posted for my wedding. I'm taking her to court for defamation. I talked to a lawyer, and according to him, I actually have a very solid case. Broadcasting lies to thousands of people, dragging my name through the mud, and presenting herself as the poor, innocent victim, that's not just drama. That's reputation damage. My lawyer said this could easily turn into compensation for emotional distress and reputational harm. At minimum, she may be forced to publicly retract everything she said. Worst case for her, financial penalties. Honestly, good. But it doesn't stop there. My aunt decided she's done being quiet too. She's suing my parents for manipulation and long-term mental harassment. And from what the lawyer said, her case might be even stronger than mine. Blocking her from seeing grandma. Lying for years. Spreading rumors. Gaslighting her into thinking she was abandoned and hated. There's actual evidence of all of it. If things go the way they should, my parents could be facing serious legal consequences, including compensation for years of emotional damage. The moment the lawsuits were filed, my parents completely freaked out. At first, it was nonstop calls and messages. Apologies. We didn't mean it. Let's not destroy the family. Please drop the lawsuits for the sake of peace. When that didn't work, the tone flipped instantly. Suddenly, I was the villain again. I was destroying the family. I was vindictive. I was doing this out of spite. My dad even had the nerve to tell me I was ungrateful and that they were only trying to do what was right. Yeah, sure. At this point, I'm done with the guilt trips. Done with the manipulation. Done with pretending this is normal or forgivable. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself, and I don't feel bad about it. Update 2. So, Reddit, we finally had our day in court. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better outcome. Let's start with my sister. She showed up acting like the world's biggest victim. Full sad face, poor me energy, like she hadn't done anything wrong and everyone was just out to get her. It was almost comical. My lawyer didn't waste time. He pulled out everything, screenshots, recordings, and especially the live stream where she went online crying, trashing me, claiming I kicked our parents out, abused her, and was this cold, selfish monster. The judge was not impressed. Not even a little. My sister tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding, but the video shut that down real fast. She was crystal clear about what she was doing. She wanted to publicly humiliate me. Period. In the end, the court ruled fully in my favor. The judge straight up said her actions were deliberate and malicious. I was awarded compensation for emotional distress. It wasn't some life-changing amount, but it was enough to send a message. And honestly, the best part? She was ordered to publicly retract her statements and post a formal apology on all her social media accounts. Watching her be forced to admit she was wrong? Absolute chef esquisse. Now, on to my parents' and my aunt's case. Her case was way more complex, but she absolutely nailed it. She came prepared. Text messages, old emails, even physical letters. All of it showed years of manipulation. There were messages of my dad telling grandma that my aunt didn't care about her. There were emails where my mom literally pretended to be grandma, telling my aunt to stay away and stop contacting the family. It was insane to see it all laid out like that. The lawyer walked the court through everything, and it became painfully obvious that my parents had been playing mind games with her for years. The judge didn't hesitate. The court ruled in my aunt's favor too. My parents were found guilty of emotional and mental harassment. They were ordered to pay her a significant amount in compensatory damages, which, let's be real, is more effort than they ever put into caring about me. On top of that, my aunt was granted a restraining order. They're legally not allowed to contact her or go anywhere near her again. Honestly, she looked relieved more than anything. Like a weight she'd been carrying for decades finally dropped. Of course, my parents tried to play the victim card. They kept claiming they were just trying to protect the family. The court wasn't buying it. At one point, my dad actually started yelling in the courtroom. He went on about how my aunt and I were ungrateful, how he sacrificed everything, and how I'd been a problem child my whole life. The judge shut him down immediately. Not gonna lie, that part was incredibly satisfying. So that's where things stood. My sister got publicly exposed. My aunt got justice and peace. And my parents were finally held accountable for their bullshit. But wait, there's more. Update 3. The roller coaster somehow kept going, but this time in a good way. My grandma made a massive decision. She officially removed my parents from her property and inheritance. Yep, completely cut off. She told me she'd had enough of their manipulation and lies. She's leaving everything to my aunt and me. I was honestly stunned when she told me, but she said it was the only way she could finally move forward and feel at peace. After seeing what my parents did to my aunt, she realized it didn't deserve anything. My aunt tried to talk her out of it, saying it wasn't necessary. Grandma didn't budge. She told us, "You both deserve this after everything." As expected, my parents lost their minds. Since they can't contact me directly, they tried a new angle. My mother-in-law. Yep, calls, texts, playing the victim, trying to paint me as the villain and get her on their side. Big mistake. Maya Miles shut that shit down immediately. She even forwarded me their messages. It was honestly embarrassing how desperate they sounded. After watching how my aunt handled everything, I decided to do the same. I filed for a restraining order against my parents too. Best decision I could have made. I don't want them pulling any more stunts, especially now that they're trying to involve my husband's family. The restraining order gives me peace of mind. They can't harass me, my husband, or anyone else in my life anymore. And surprisingly, everything else is actually going really well. My husband and I are happy. We're settling into married life without constant chaos hanging over us. I wish none of this had ever happened, but in a strange way, things are better now. It feels like all the toxic energy has finally been cleared out. My grandma and my aunt are even living together now, and they seem genuinely happy. Calm, at peace. Life feels easier, lighter. Maybe this is how it was always supposed to be. So yeah, that's the conclusion.